Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you again. This is the Better Off Dead NFL Week 4. Is that where we're at? I think so. I don't even know. I've moved my mic a little bit, so let me know if my mic is still all right. I mean, I don't think it's ever all right. Like, I can't get my mic levels right, man. I'm such a professional at this. It seems like it's always too low, but then I listen back to it and it's simultaneously too low, and I sound like I'm like shouting into it, so it doesn't make any sense to me. I sound like I have no voice, and then I don't know how I can still like sing. Uh, well, I can't really anymore, but I don't even know how I can sing at all. But let's get into, well, I can talk about what happened today, I guess, with my plays. I went 2-3 today. The baseball play, the under was a complete bust in Pittsburgh, New York. Is that what it was? Pittsburgh and the Yankees. Couple of things I did not expect in that game. Paul Skeens, they did not let him go deep into that game. He only went 2 innings and they yanked him. So I did not expect him to get the hook after 2 innings. 2 scoreless innings from Skeens, and then he's out of there. So right away, because of that, not looking good. And then Luis Heel had a terrible performance. I think he went 5 innings, but he gave up 6 runs in a loss for the Yankees there. So that under was not even close. The college was way more frustrating, though. I mean, it was frustrating to see Skeens get pulled when you don't expect it, but you think you should maybe look into it more. But I don't even know if you could. Yeah, what's up, Abergett? 2-3. I'm not happy about it. I mean, it's not a huge loss, but it's not great. I mean, maybe there were some indications they might pull Skeens early, but I didn't really see any. I thought because it was his last start of the year that they were just going to let him go. Completely wrong about that. Well, I'm just mad at that. I'm more mad about the college football slate and the way that happened because, I mean, the couple of games at the beginning won. 2 of the 12 o'clock games won. Kansas State, that was an easy winner. No sweat. I had that game on a little bit. Wasn't that interesting, really. I was just like, all right, sweet. This is going to be a win. Minnesota was able to backdoor cover against Michigan, and they actually cut it to 3 points, and it was not a high-scoring game on the part of either team. So I think I did nail that one as well, even though Minnesota was down by more than the spread at some point in the second half, I think. And then more frustrating were the 2 losses, obviously. BYU started off the game with at least 4 straight touchdowns, I think. Or maybe it was only 3, but it was like Baylor, you're in a 21-0 hole. You're not going to come back from that. And they almost did. They fought valiantly and got back. I don't know if they took the lead at some point in the game, but they got to within 1 score at the very least. I don't know if they were within 1 score of covering a 3-point spread as a favorite or not, but that was the one that was furthest away. And then Auburn that was the most frustrating out of all of them, man. I had Auburn +2. I crushed the closing number on that. I think they went off -1.5 or maybe even -2 at game time. Absolutely got a good number on that. They were winning by 11 points in the fourth quarter of that game, I'm pretty sure, against a pretty suspect Oklahoma offense, and somehow Oklahoma was able to win and cover and beat them by 6 points. And I think Oklahoma, I don't know, I think they were, in the teens going into the fourth quarter, or maybe even less than that. That was so bad. Tracy, what's up? Indianapolis Colts, which is kind of a long story, but maybe I'll tell it because I'll just warn you ahead of time. I hate this NFL card this week, even though it's a full slate. We haven't gotten into the buys yet, I don't think. It's not a bye week yet, right? Is it? I don't think it is. I think buys start next week, and the stupid London games start next week too. But so usually those are the weeks where I have fewer plays. But this is a full slate of NFL games, I think, and I hate the card. I have one play that I really, really like that I'm on, and then another play that I think is good enough for a play. So I have 2 plays in the NFL, but it's just bad. So, I mean, I'm trying to grind my way back here. London games are terrible. Tracy, my NFL team is the Indianapolis Colts, even though I am from Massachusetts. I'm Boston Toad. I grew up rooting for the Patriots up through the Bill Parcells, Curtis Matton, and Drew Bledsoe era. Bill Parcells kid. I was rooting for that whole team, and then immediately started rooting against them when that era ended and they got Bill Belichick and Tom Brady because I hated both of them right away. I think that's just the way I judge character. I judge them both to be extreme scumbag characters, slimeball characters, and I just rooted against the Patriots immediately after that And naturally, what I gravitated to was who was the anti-Tom Brady during that era? Well, that was Peyton Manning, who I think was the best quarterback of that era still. He just maybe didn't have quite the team and the coaching around him that he needed to really dominate. But I think he was the best quarterback skill-wise of that era. I thought that he was a much more hilarious dude at the very least. Brady is absolutely gay. If you watch like interviews with him, he does the leg cross, like the gay leg cross, where he's like, it looks like he doesn't even have like a package there at all because his nuts would be getting crushed. No man can cross their legs like that, dude. Like a real man will just have his ankle on his thigh as the leg cross. He does the leg cross where he's like crushing his balls. If you know what I'm talking about. The thigh over thigh, totally homosexual. Yeah, so I rooted for the Colts back then. Peyton Manning, a much more hilarious dude. I'm not looking forward to Tom Brady being one of the commentary crew now on whatever. I think he's on Fox. I don't even know where he's at, but he's going to suck at it. It's going to be terrible. Peyton Manning, much more hilarious commentary guy. Nate, yeah, I know. The BYU, I was hoping they were going to give it up. I mean, obviously, the way I handicapped that, but Baylor was in way too much of a hole. The game was wild. You mean the Oklahoma game or the Baylor game? I don't know, but the Oklahoma-Auburn one, I mean, that was one of the most frustrating. I thought that was a really terrible beat. That's going to stick in my craw and in my brain for quite a while. Young NBC, what's up? This is not Tower Gang, and it is not Nephilim Death Squad. This is the degenerate gambling show that is part of the Tower Gang network. I got to talk about NFL, man. Yeah, the Oklahoma one, I'm so pissed off about that. Let's get into this NFL card, dude. I mean, I hate this card, as I said. It is just disgusting. Like, I don't even know how many of these games I even want to comment on because you have so many games here, at least multiple games that are between teams that you want to play like on a team that got totally embarrassed last week typically, but the teams that all got embarrassed the most are all up against each other in the embarrassment bowls. One of them is this one, Jaguars-Texans. So, like, Jaguars got totally embarrassed on Monday night, and that was my only loss last week. I went 2-1 last week with the NFL on the show with Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers, man. I mean, those made people kind of look at me like I had two heads when I said that both of those teams were going to not only cover, but win outright just because I got overconfident, but maybe I didn't because they did both win outright. So I hit on those, and the Jaguars just, I don't understand what's even happening with the Jaguars, man, but they got absolutely annihilated on a Monday night in front of a national TV audience. So that's the type of spot where you might think that they're going to finally show up and like play a good game just because that was so embarrassing. But I don't even know if that's going to be the case because that was a bad spot for Buffalo, which is why I faded Buffalo, and the Jaguars still got absolutely destroyed. So that is kind of a red flag to me. That might mean that Jacksonville is actually no good at all. So there's no way that I can play on Jacksonville after that performance. Facing Buffalo in a spot where Buffalo might not even pay attention, sandwiched between a huge blowout win that was a misleading win on a Thursday night game with extra time to think about it over Miami, and with this big game against Baltimore coming up, which I have to talk about because it's a Sunday night game this week. So 2 primetime games. That was a major sandwich for Buffalo, and the Jaguars still got wrecked by 37 points. I mean, if the Jaguars can't even show up and play decently, like, I don't care that they didn't cover. I care that they got absolutely wasted in that game. That tells me that there's something absolutely wrong with Jacksonville. I can't do that. Houston Texans got totally embarrassed as well, going to Minnesota. But at the very least, you could say that Minnesota's defense is playing pretty well to start the season. So that's a less embarrassing result, even though you lose by 20 whatever points. It's still pretty embarrassing nonetheless. But I don't even know what to think about this. And maybe in these embarrassment bowls, you could look to play totals instead, but play like the totals under because you expect, well, finally these teams are going to just show up and like focus again, which means when teams show up focused, they usually play better defense in football. And you just see the total has come down from 46 to 44.5. And it's very public on the over, 75% of the tickets and 72% of the cash. So maybe the under would be the way to look in this disappointment bowl number 1 here between Jags, Texans. The one thing that we could say is that Jacksonville has been massively struggling offensively, man. I don't know if this is Trevor Lawrence still hurt because he broke his collarbone or whatever last year, and then he came back and he was just awful. Like, I think he was playing injured, and I thought he would be better to start this season, but that has not been the case at all. This Jacksonville passing offense looks horrific, and their rushing attack has never been good with ATN, so I don't know what is happening there. And it's not going to get any easier up against a Texans defense. It's actually been pretty good against the pass. Even in that loss to Minnesota, Sam Darnold did not light them up. Minnesota did a lot of damage on the ground. So this Texans defense actually matches up well against Jacksonville's more pass-heavy offense, and their passing offense still hasn't even been good. And against this Texans defense that will have the ability to shut them down. Texans offense also has not looked very good so far this year. Like, they look like they're kind of taking a step back, maybe because the league has seen like a year's worth of footage of CJ Stroud now and seen what this Texans offense is trying to do, where they're kind of trying to do what that like Houston Oilers Warren Moon team did back in the day. I find it to be a little bit similar to that. I can't remember, what did they call that offense? I don't know why it's slipping my mind there, but I think this Houston team is kind of running a similar style of like passing attack there, and maybe the league is starting to figure it out. So under would, I guess, probably be the way I would look in that game. Vikings-Packers is going to be a huge game at the very least because it's a big divisional game, and this is the Jordan Love question mark game, basically, because we have no idea if he's playing or not, which has been the case since he got injured. Green Bay is basically pulling a Bill Belichick and listing Jordan Love as questionable every single week, basically, until he actually comes back. So you don't even know if he's coming back or not. And I think that that's illegal. Like, I think it's against the league rules. Like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. And Bill Belichick would always do that. He would always play games with the injury reports. He'd list like everybody is questionable. Brady was just questionable every time. It got to the point where it's like, yeah, we know Brady's playing. Stop listing him as questionable. But with what Green Bay is doing here with it, you just really have no idea if you're going to be facing Jordan Love or not. So the defenses have to like prepare for two different quarterbacks, essentially. We don't know if it's going to be him or Malik Willis, or I think it was still Malik Willis last week, right? And the Packers somehow were able to win again, even though it was the second game without Jordan Love, which I always talk about the injured player theory, man. That first game where the player gets injured, which I mentioned when the Packers played my Indianapolis Colts, that game you want to look to go on that team that has the injured player because they usually step up and you're usually getting extra value on the line on that team. Like the Packers were getting like 3.5 points at home in that game with the Jordan Love injury. So you wanted to look on that team there because they were going to step it up for that one game. But then once they do that, if they do that and they win, you usually tend to see them take a step back in the next game because they figure, oh, well, we just won with this other guy. Now we're like comfortable. So I thought that the Packers were going to take a step back last week. I thought they would lose to the Tennessee Titans. That did not happen at all. The Tennessee Titans, there's something wrong with that team too, man. This Titans team, Mike Vrabel isn't there anymore, and I don't know what's happening with the Titans, man. It looks like their coaching is probably not good. Derrick Henry's gone from town. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is playing injured probably. I think he has like an injured MCL, and he's just still out there. Not the DeAndre Hopkins of old. This Titans team has got major issues as well. So I don't know what to think about this, man. But if the Packers, this line looks like Jordan Love is, I guess, still not coming back, or maybe this line is thrown up kind of in the middle because the odds makers are just trying to like play both sides a little bit, and they don't really know if he's going to be back or not because Jordan Love seems to affect the line by about 7 points. So I don't know. Like, if Jordan Love was playing, would the Packers actually be a 10-point favorite against a 3-0 Vikings team, even though it is in Green Bay? Probably not. But I don't think the Packers, with Malik Willis at quarterback, would even be a 3-point favorite. So I do think they've actually thrown that number right in the middle there. And I think if Jordan Love is actually announced that he's playing, I think you'll probably see the line move to about 6 or so, maybe, would be my guess. Maybe I'm misreading that entirely, but we don't know if he's going to play or not. I think he did miss one of the practices this week again, so my guess would be that he is not going to play. And given that, I don't know how to read this game at all. Like, if Jordan Love was coming back and you saw the Packers shoot up in the line, then you get the reverse injured player theory, which is when that star player comes back, it's the reverse of when they It's the reverse of the first game where they're out. When they come back, the team might be a little bit complacent if they were winning without him. They're thinking, well, we won without this guy. This is going to be an easy game now that we have this guy back. And the line the line has to adjust to that guy coming back. And sometimes it over adjusts. So that team's going to become like a bigger favorite than they maybe should be. So that's the reverse injured player theory. The value tends to be going against that team. And plus, that guy that's coming back has to like kind of get back into his rhythm. So a lot of times they're not just like great again, like right out of the gate. They have to get back into that rhythm. So if and when Jordan Love is actually coming back, I would be looking to fade the Packers, but I don't think it's happening in this game. The Packers are off of that big blowout win. Well, not a big win, but it was a blowout win over a bad Titans team. But the Vikings are also coming off a more impressive blowout win over the Houston Texans, as I said. So it's not a spot where I would look to play on the Vikings either, because I think the Vikings look way too good after the first 3 weeks, and I think the line's got to be somehow overreacting to that Vikings start, because, again, I don't think Sam Darnold is like all of a sudden this like Hall of Fame quarterback, which just seems like he's being hailed as. I think the Vikings are playing well as a team so far, but I'm not sure how impressive their wins have been so far either, though. Like, they did beat the Giants, so it's like, hold your horses a little bit. Beating Houston is pretty impressive, though, and beating them the way that they did is impressive. So I will say that. Titans do need a QB, yeah. Malik wanted revenge. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Against the Titans team that just got rid of him. I think that goes both ways, because you can see the quarterback will want to play well against the team that got rid of him, obviously, because they want to show up the team that got rid of him. But the team that got rid of him also knows his tendencies, so they know how to play defense against him. So I think it kind of goes both ways. So it's a little bit hard to read that quarterback revenge. Do we have a quarterback revenge scenario in Bengals-Panthers? I don't know. Bengals are a heavy public road favorite here. Public's still not buying the Panthers, even though they won last week for me. Public not really putting much stock into the Panthers finally winning a game because it was against the Raiders. The Raiders, who also aren't very good, really, I don't think. Bengals down from 5.5 to 4.5, so it looks like there is a little bit of reverse line movement against the Bengals. 81% of the tickets, but at 92% of the cash. You're not going to find me on the Bengals, man, laying the points with a public road favorite like this. And the Bengals are in that spot where they're 0-3. When a team that's supposed to be good, like supposed to be a playoff team like the Bengals, they're used to being in the playoffs over and over again, they fall to 0-3, and that means that their chances of making the playoffs, like teams that are 0-3 hardly ever make the playoffs. As I pointed out, only a few times has it happened. So if that team falls to 0-3, are we looking at that team being in a dream crusher scenario? That's kind of what you have to gauge. Like, are the Bengals going to start actually like getting down on themselves and starting to pack it in because they realize they're not going to be able to make the playoffs? Or maybe that would happen if they fall 0-4. It's like, you're absolutely definitely out. That's like, that would have to be like the ultimate dream crusher, I guess. But 0-3, I don't know. That's a pretty devastating loss, too. So this is hard for me to read, man, with the Bengals-Panthers here. Like, will the Bengals actually show up for once, or are they going to be really down on themselves being 0-3? They did get kind of embarrassed on national TV, even though they had a chance to win that game late. So the game was maybe a little bit closer than the final score looked, but they gave up a lot of points to Washington and that Jayden Daniels offense. Jayden Daniels, man, the league, I think eventually the league is probably going to figure out what he's doing, and he won't look as good maybe, but he is looking good so far. And I think, as I've said, I think he is probably the best quarterback out of this year's draft class. So that Washington offense, I think, is fairly legitimate, to be honest. Their defense is terrible. But the Bengals, I mean, that's a pretty embarrassing way to lose either way. Losing to Washington at home to fall to 0-3 when you're basically a perennial playoff team in the Joe Burrow era. National TV audience that happened. So does that mean the Bengals are going to actually get fired up because of that and actually show up here? I don't know. I mean, how fired up can you be against the Carolina Panthers? I don't really know. And the fact that the Carolina Panthers basically shocked themselves back into focus by going to Andy Dalton. Bryce Young clearly was not the solution. And one of the main reasons I was on the Panthers last week was because they were switching to Andy Dalton, which I thought was going to be a spark, like be the spark that the team needed. And oh boy, was it. He became the first NFL quarterback this season to have 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in a game. And then I think it happened again in one of the games after that. I forget who else did it, but one of the other quarterbacks last week also did it after that. But maybe that's the spark the Panthers needed, and maybe that's going to start some momentum for them, man, because they've been losing so many games, and now they win a game, they win decisively. That actually could start some positive momentum for the Panthers. And they have, of course, a perennial contender. Like I said, Bengals coming into their house. So I could see the Panthers showing up again in this game, too. I don't really think the Panthers would be in like a letdown mode just because they beat the Raiders, even though it was an upset. I don't think it was that like big of an emotional upset, really, or big emotional game, really. I think it was just Panthers kind of shocked themselves back into focus and played a good game. So this game is really hard to read. And like I said, the other element of this is revenge, because Andy Dalton, now the quarterback for the Panthers, is playing against his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm guessing he's probably faced the Bengals before, though, because he's been on multiple teams since he's been gone from Cincinnati. So it probably isn't that meaningful for him to be playing the Bengals again if he's faced them already since they got rid of him. They got rid of him like years ago, so probably not really a factor, but I just thought it was funny that was being that was being talked about. Pistolero, what's up, brother? The Red Rifle, Tracy, yeah, the Red Rocket. I don't know what Andy Dalton's official nickname is, but yeah, he's one of those. It is also my nickname for reasons that I won't divulge. I'm not a redhead, though. I will point that out. Except when I sunburn my bald head, then I become a redheaded libertarian. What else we got? Broncos Jets. Kind of interesting because the Broncos, they're coming off that other game that I was on last week where they pulled off a pretty nice big upset over Tampa Bay. And are the Broncos, like, that was their first win with Bo Nix as their quarterback, so they could be in line for a little bit of a letdown coming into this game, because they could see that as kind of like what I kind of call like the legitimizer game. When you have like a new era, new quarterback, and you finally get that first win, especially if it's a road upset, you might kind of take a step back the next week, and they're now having to face a second straight road game against a Jets team that has extra rest. The Jets have extra rest because they haven't played since last Thursday night, and even though, yeah, it was a divisional win for the Jets, but beating beating a team that has a lot of problems in the New England Patriots, even though it is a divisional game, are the Jets really going to consider that to be a huge win? I don't really think so. And the Jets did not really have to put in like a huge effort in that game to win. That game was, I think, kind of a cakewalk for the Jets, to be honest. So the Jets, I don't think they're going to be in line for a letdown coming into this game off of that. The Patriots are a bad team this year, so I expect the Jets to probably show up again. And the Broncos, yeah, I mean, they won against a really weak Tampa Bay secondary. I mean, that Tampa Bay secondary has a lot of problems, man. The Jets, this is a different animal. The Jets defense, I don't think Bo Nix is going to have as easy a time in this one. So I do lean to the Jets in this one, but you could have laid 7 a while back, and now it looks like it's up to 9. But I don't know how much of that is legitimate. I mean, we do see the Jets are public, 78% of the tickets, so the public still not buying the Broncos, and they are buying Aaron Rodgers all of a sudden. Public back on the Aaron Rodgers train after he's won a couple games. 82% of the cash also on the Jets, and the line has moved up to 9, but it's 9 with a lot of like reduced juice plus money, so that's really actually closer to an 8.5. But the reason why the books just jump right up to 9 is a teaser killer. So that's what's actually going on here. So I think it's a combination of the fact that the public is coming in on the Jets. I think some professionals have actually probably come in on the Jets, and the books have just moved it all the way to 9 to kill teasers. Because I think the Jets, because they are a public team, I think they're a public teaser leg this week as well. Teasers, I'll mention it again, I guess it's really a thing that only applies to the NFL. I don't think you want to play teasers in any other sport. Basically, the one teaser that actually gives you an edge is in the NFL, a 2-team 6-point teaser, which means that you take 2 teams, you get to knock 6 points off of the line, or take the line at 6 points better in your favor, but you need both of those to hit to win the teaser, or else it loses, and you have to pay a little bit more for it because the books know how advantageous it is If you know what you're doing, you have to pay like at least minus 120 for it now. A lot of times you can't even find minus 120 on it anymore, but minus 120 is kind of like the standard. Like if you do play the teaser, that's what you want to do. And the only ways that you want to play the teaser in the NFL, you want to tease the side and you want to tease it through all the key numbers of 3, 4, and 7, because those are the numbers that matter: the field goal, the 4-point lead, and the touchdown. So if you can get through all those key numbers, you'd be either taking an underdog who is an underdog of below 3 points and taking it up above 7, or a favorite that's above 7 and able to take it down to below 3. Those are the only teaser legs that make any sense. So that's why the books go to 9, because that kills the teaser. So if you wanted to tease the Jets down on the 6-point teaser, if they were sitting at 7.5, you could take them down to the 1.5, and that would be part of that. It's the Stanford Wong teaser, because he's the guy who came up with that approach. But books going to 9, that means you can't do that anymore. If you play the 6-point teaser, you're only taking it down to 3, so you're not getting it below 3, so you're sitting on 3. And if that leg of the teaser pushes, the teaser still loses if one of the legs pushes. You need to actually win both legs. There are no teaser pushes, so that's why they do that. If that makes sense, I don't know. I'm getting super autistic here. Tampa, yeah, they're really banged up. I can talk about that game. Fan of the Eagles there. Broncos-Jets, tough call. I lean to the Jets. The Jets, I think, are one of my stronger leans this week, actually, even though I'm not playing it. I think the Broncos probably are in a letdown spot, and they're really stepping up in class. This Jets defense is a different animal than the Tampa Bay defense, with all those injuries especially, and it's a second straight road game for a rookie quarterback. That's not easy, man. And the Jets, like I said, have extra rest too, and they're not really coming off of what I consider to be a big win, so I don't think they would consider that either. So lean to the Jets. Haven't played it though, but the Jets, I think, are probably a decent way to look in like survivor pools and stuff this week. And I think they're probably a pretty good teaser, but not anymore, obviously, at 9. I think the Jets as a teaser leg, if you were able to get them down to anywhere below 3, I think they make sense as a teaser leg this week as well. Eagles, Buccaneers, we can talk about this game. This is a weird game for a lot of reasons. The Eagles were a 2-point road favorite. They're down to 1 with juice, so it's moved down a little bit. The Eagles are a little bit public. 61% of the tickets on, I guess, because the public are fickle, man, and they basically have ADD and they have short-term memory. Like the public are very high time preference, man. They're really only looking at what just happened last, and they probably really didn't like what they saw out of the Buccaneers last week, losing 26-7 or whatever it was to the Denver Broncos. So that's more egregious than the Eagles. The public is probably going to put a lot of stock, actually, in the Eagles being able to completely shut down a New Orleans offense who scored 40-something points in each of their first 2 games. So public on the Eagles, 61%, but the cash looks like it's at 80% on the Eagles, even though the line has actually dropped on the Eagles a little bit. Kind of conflicting indicators in the market there. The Eagles, I consider the Eagles side a little bit because this is revenge for the Eagles, and it is one example of revenge that actually matters is in the NFL when you're facing the team that when you're facing the team that ended your season last year, and that's what happened to the Eagles. They lost to Tampa in the playoffs, and not only to Tampa, but in Tampa. So the Eagles are returning to the scene of the crime here, man. So this is like basically exact revenge for the Eagles here, playing in the same stadium. So I do think the Eagles are going to have to show up focused here, even though beating New Orleans seemed like a pretty big win because New Orleans had been so hot in the first 2 weeks. But I don't know what we can really take away from what New Orleans did those first 2 weeks against Carolina. I mean, I don't know if there's much to take away from that. And against a Dallas defense that I really think is suspect. I'm not sure really what you can take away from that, because the Eagles apparently do have a pretty good defense again this year, and they completely shut down New Orleans. And the fact that that game was close is very misleading. The Eagles actually were down 3-0, I think, in the second half of that game, maybe even in the fourth quarter of that game. I mentioned I picked the Eagles in pools, and I still got it right. They covered and won the game outright. But the Eagles, they completely outgained the Saints in that game, man. I think it was a massive yardage discrepancy in that game, if I remember correctly. Where are we looking at here? I can look at it real quick. So I think that the fact that it was 15-12, I think was ridiculously misleading. The Eagles scored all their points in the fourth quarter. Yeah, they outgained New Orleans 460 to 219. One time of possession, one first downs. They had -1 in turnover. So the Eagles, again, that's a very misleading result, dude. The Eagles defense played really well to shut down that New Orleans Saints offense that was playing really hot the first 2 weeks. And the Eagles offense did way more than what the scoreboard makes it look. So the Eagles played a lot better than it looks in that game. So I think you could be getting potentially value on the Eagles coming into this game as well, just because of that, because they looked a lot worse than they actually were in that game, even though, yes, they still won. Tampa also looked worse than they were. I mean, you can't look worse than losing 26-7 at home to the Denver Broncos. So, I mean, the Eagles should be, the Buccaneers should kind of be in like a bounce back spot here. So, really, I think kind of both of these teams have certain elements to the situation where you'd want to play on both of these teams, which then maybe that might mean you should be looking to an under in this game. But the way the total is in this game, man, I think it's kind of dangerous to play an under now. And the total's gone down from 47.5 to 42. And you are looking at a Bucs defense that really, like I've been saying, they have a lot of injuries, especially in the secondary. It's a cluster injury situation. So it's not, the Buccaneers defense is a little bit in shambles right now. Playing the under, the fact that it's dropped all the way to 42 looks kind of difficult to do, even though you're seeing 60% of the tickets on the over in this game, despite the fact that these two teams only combined for 22 points last week. The public is still coming in on the over. The under has 66% of the cash, however, so it does look like there are a lot of market indicators on the under here, but I wouldn't want to play it under this lower total, man. But I think a lot of the reason why the total dropped is the hurricane situation, because we're looking at the fact that this hurricane just came through. It kind of went through central, I think, Florida, and kind of was on the Gulf side of Florida there. So I don't know how it might affect this. I mean, the hurricane's already through, so I don't know if it's really going to have that much of an impact on this game. I don't know what the weather's actually going to be like in this game specifically with the hurricane not there anymore. But the hurricane, I think, certainly would have impacted Tampa's practice, because I am assuming Tampa is just staying at home because they played at home last week. So I highly doubt that they went anywhere or were able to get anywhere. And if they tried to travel out of the area, I think that would be a worse situation for them. So I don't know what their practice was like this week. If they had any issues trying to practice, they probably were able to practice indoors somewhere, I would guess. I don't know. Philly, I mean, they could actually have issues as well because their travel might have been delayed or something. It might have been impacted trying to come in while the hurricane was there. So they might have gotten into Tampa a little bit later than they would have otherwise as well. So I don't really know how the hurricane situation is going to affect these two teams here. And sometimes the line can overreact to that on the total, and maybe it has. When you see bad weather, a lot of times the total will drop so low that it at some point becomes an overreaction, and there's just no value left in playing the under here. So I don't know. I mean, it seems a little bit dangerous to do it, but the Eagles do look like they're playing very well defensively, and their offense does appear to be struggling still. Even though Saquon Barkley had one really good game in that first week, but that was in Brazil on a churned up turf where the defenses were just really bad in that game. And the defenses just couldn't get their footing in that game. Both running backs really lit it up in that game. So I don't know. Eagles have injuries on offense too. Todd Bowles. I mean, Todd Bowles and Tampa have been really good. They have the Eagles number recently. Yeah. Philly, I think you will see them be running Barkley a lot. Well, I don't know, because Tampa, you probably want to attack their secondary, though, because Tampa's secondary is pretty injured. Yeah, I mean, Sirianni, he's the lesser of the two coaches, I would say, that's for sure. Jalen Carter, I don't know if he's going to show up or not, but yeah, Baker Mayfield, I'm still not sold on Baker Mayfield, even though he had a good season last year. I never thought that he was that good, and I think we might see him start to regress a little bit again. He didn't do very well last week against the Broncos, but their defense might be good, so I don't know. And, oh, yes, that is true. I forgot to mention that Smith was already out. I think, what did Smith get? Like a concussion or something? And then, or no, A.J. Brown was out first. I forget. I always confuse the two Philadelphia wide receivers. One of them was out already, and the other one got injured last week, took like a really hard hit last week against the Saints. The guy who delivered that hit, I think, got fined or something, or maybe even got suspended for a game. I don't even know what happened there, but Brown is the one who's been out for weeks. All right, yeah. So you're right. The Eagles are down their top two wide receivers, so that is probably going to also impact their offense, but that also might have something to do with why the line has moved so much. It might not just be the weather situation. It might be reacting to how many injuries the Eagles have on offense there. So you're right about that. And then, yeah, I don't know what else to talk about here with these games. I will say the Chiefs do have this game against the Chargers, even though it is a divisional game. The Chiefs have this game sandwiched in between two primetime games. They played on Sunday night last week, which was a pretty low-scoring, tough battle against Atlanta on the road. Now they have to actually fly out to the West Coast now from the East Coast to face the Chargers. And then the Chiefs, I think, are going to have to at some point come back. I think they're playing at home on Monday night next week. And I forget who that is against, but I think it is a somewhat big game just because it is Monday night. Well, I should look, I guess. If I'm going to mention it, I should probably figure that out, right? It's against the New Orleans Saints. This is a Monday night game, I'm pretty sure, next Monday night. So they are playing two primetime games, and they're having to go second straight road game and flying East Coast to West Coast to play a 4:25 p.m. game. So not an easy spot for the Chiefs. So I do lean against the Chiefs in this one. They're public, and they're up from 4.5 to 7 with juice. What in the hell is going on that the Chiefs are up to 7? Like, this made me think that Justin Herbert probably wasn't going to play if the Chiefs line moved up that much. Like, I think it does have to do with the Justin Herbert injury situation, because he is, at the very least, if he's playing, I think he's going to be playing a little bit injured. But this line moved up so much that I was like, are the Chargers going to be starting Easton Stick in this game? Easton Stick is the Chargers' backup quarterback, and he at least has some experience now if he's going to be in there, because he played a few games last year. But, I mean, if Justin Herbert isn't playing in this game, I actually might wind up with a play on the Chargers. Just playing, when you add the injured player theory into all of this, this looks like way too many points for the Chiefs to be laying, dude. The Chiefs, how many games have they won? The Chiefs are 3-0, but how many games have they won by a touchdown? 0? I don't think the Chiefs have won any games by at least 7 this entire season, even though they're 3-0. They're winning all these close games. Oh, sorry. They won by exactly 7 against Baltimore, in week 1. And then they won by 1 and 5. So the Chiefs have not won by more than 7 in any of these games. So laying 7 on the road seems a bit absurd to me. This line is just getting out of control, so I would only look to take the points with the Chargers here. 71% of the tickets and only 62% of the cash on the Chiefs. Chiefs are a public road favorite, one of those dreaded public road favorites. More of the tickets than the cash on the Chiefs here. The Chargers coming off kind of an ugly loss, too, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 3-0 now. Chargers did not play well in that game against the Steelers, so they're coming off an ugly loss, whereas the Chiefs have a shorter week because they played Sunday night. It was a tougher game. Tough travel spot. I mean, I might be talking myself into a play on the Chargers here. I'm getting close to doing it. I don't know if I will, but Chargers plus the 7. I mean, 7 is a key number to it. It looks like it's going through the 7. I would only look to take the points with the Chargers in that one. Smith got hit to the head. Yeah, he was the one who got hit to the head last week. Yeah. That's right. Alt is doubtful. I don't think that's the reason. Even your best offensive lineman, I know he is a rookie, but he is probably still their best O-lineman. But even if your best offensive lineman is hurt, that's not going to move the line 3 points. Like, not even close. Like, an offensive line injury probably isn't going to affect the line at all. So I don't really understand I think it's the Justin Herbert injury situation coming into effect here. But to me, last I looked, it looked like he was actually still going to play. So I don't quite understand that. But Chargers plus 7 would be the only way I would play that game. There's no way I would lay those points with the Chiefs. Absolutely not. And the Chargers do tend to play the Chiefs pretty tough, too, in that divisional rivalry there. Bills-Ravens, Sunday night game. I always talk about the primetime games, and we have a stupid Monday night doubleheader this week as well. Bills-Ravens is a pretty good game, man. We're getting a good matchup on Sunday night. Ravens up from -2 to -2.5 at home, going through the 2.5. 65% of the tickets are on the underdog Bills, but 74% of the cash on the Bills. I don't know if I buy that more of the cash and the tickets are on the Bills, because I'm not quite sure that I would lean to the Bills in this one. I mean, the Bills, I think they've looked too good so far this season, man. The public obviously is going to be coming in on the Bills side as they're 3-0 to start the season, and the Ravens have not looked very impressive so far this season. But the Ravens, I mean, they have not faced really the easiest schedule. I mean, they started out having to play the Kansas City Chiefs on the road, and then I think that Raiders game that they played, that was kind of a sandwich spot, man, if you think about it. I mean, coming off that big game to start the season against Kansas City, playing the lowly Raiders as a huge home favorite, and they just, even though they were winning by 10 in that game in the fourth quarter, I don't really know how the Ravens blew that game. Just bad coaching, really, I think is what's going on with the Ravens. Then the Ravens had a pretty big game against Dallas last week, and the Ravens, that's actually a misleading final score because the Ravens dominated that game. The Ravens were winning 28-6 in the fourth quarter of that game. And again, I think the Ravens took their foot off the gas. They got to stop doing that, dude. Again, I think it's all coaching because the Ravens had a big lead in both of these last two games in the fourth quarter. Multiple score lead, and they blew one and almost blew the other. So they got to stop doing that. And maybe they will here. I kind of want to lean to the Ravens in this one because they're 1-2 and they're not as bad as that record would indicate, I wouldn't say. And Buffalo is 3-0, and you can't look better than 3-0 so far. Not only can you not look better than 3-0, but you can't look any better than Buffalo did last week, man. As I already mentioned, they killed my bet. They absolutely destroyed Jacksonville at home, and they've been destroying everybody. Well, not destroying everybody, but they've been putting up huge point totals, 34, 31, and 47. I mean, come on. And this is a Buffalo offense that lost their top two wide receivers they had last year, Diggs and Gabe Davis. So this offense has to start regressing at some point. There's no way they're going to be averaging 36 points per game or whatever they're averaging. That's not going to continue, dude. Against a Ravens defense, that even if the Ravens lost a couple of their defenders from last year, I don't think this Ravens defense is all of a sudden bad. This Ravens defense is still going to be the best defense that Buffalo has faced so far. I mean, come on. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know how good Jacksonville is at all, really. And Arizona and Miami, not good defenses. So this is going to be the best defense Buffalo has faced so far. Buffalo's on a short week because they played on Monday night, and they looked as good as possible in every one of these games pretty much, especially on that Monday night. And maybe not winning by only 6 against Arizona, but looking that great against Jacksonville in a primetime game for a primetime national TV audience. The stock can't get higher on Buffalo at this point, man. So I would not want to be on the Buffalo side. I would not be joining the public in this game. No, thank you. That's basically what I'll have to say about that one. I kind of agree with where this line move is headed. It looks like it's reverse moving against the public. I lean to the Ravens in that one. Monday night, we have a great game here. Titans-Dolphins, 100% coaching for the Ravens. I know, the Ravens, I mean, they have Derrick Henry now. They have multiple pretty good running backs. They have a good quarterback. They still have some pretty good wide receivers on that team. They have good offensive weapons, man, and they still have a pretty good defense, even if they lost a couple of guys on defense. There's no reason that they should be taking their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter like this, for one thing. But the Ravens, they've just been unwilling to run the ball. I don't understand what they're doing here. Even though I'm saying, you shouldn't take your foot off the gas, but they have Derrick Henry, man, and they're not utilizing him correctly. So it kind of goes both ways there. They're not running in the right situations, and they're not doing it correctly. I don't really know what the Ravens are doing. Titans-Dolphins, I mean, thank the NFL schedulers for this one. Did they even think this was going to be a good game when they scheduled this to begin with? I don't know. I mean, granted, last year, it actually was a very exciting game. The Titans actually did have a Monday night game, I'm pretty sure, against the Dolphins late last season, if I remember correctly. And the Dolphins were a huge favorite, a double-digit favorite, and the Titans beat them outright. And it was this crazy game with some late scoring on both sides, just a wild game. So does that mean the Dolphins are going to be focused in this one because they remember the Titans doing that to them? I kind of doubt that. Like, I don't think that'll be a factor. I don't think this is going to be a huge revenge spot for the Dolphins, but maybe they'll remember that the Titans came into their house and beat them as a giant underdog last year in a primetime game, and this is kind of the rematch of that because this is also in Miami, and it's a primetime game. But, of course, Miami is only a 2-point favorite in this game, and I think maybe you're getting value on Miami at this point. I mean, like I said, they were a 13.5-point favorite at the end of last season or whenever that was last season at home against the Titans. And obviously the Dolphins don't have Tua now, but is that really the only thing that's factoring into this line being like 11 points different from what it was last year? Because if so, I think you're getting value on the Miami Dolphins here, man. So I do lean to the Dolphins side. It looks like the market is definitely indicating on the Dolphins side. Dolphins up from 2-2 with juice, 75% of the cash on them, 55% of the tickets on the Titans. Really? Like, are you really telling me that the public ticket percentage is coming in to some extent on the Tennessee Titans? I don't even understand how that's possible. Even without Tua, I don't understand how the public would be coming in on this Titans team that's just done absolutely nothing. I mean, Will Levis is Mr. Turnover. He has committed the most turnovers in the league. I'm playing the Dolphins defense in fantasy this week, I believe. I think that's going to be my choice this week for a defense in fantasy football, just because Will Levis is a turnover machine, dude. He manufactures his own turnovers, and I don't see that changing, even though the Dolphins defense is pretty bad. Like, they might be able to still get some turnovers here against Will Levis, who's just horrific. This Titans team has shown me absolutely nothing, dude. I mean, I was on them in week 1 because I thought Caleb Williams was being overhyped. I like the Titans defense. I still think their defense is okay, but man, I mean, they shouldn't have lost that game in week 1. That was all Will Levis turnovers, throwing that game away. And since then, the Titans have just been horrendous. Meanwhile, you got Miami with this quarterback situation. Miami is at least shaking things up. So Miami, they went to Skylar Thompson, who was the Tua backup back 2 years ago, and he actually put in a pretty good performance against Buffalo on the road in the playoffs, as I've mentioned before, back then 2 years ago. But he has not been getting it done for Miami this season. He came in for Tua, didn't look good at all. And then last week, I guess, was the last straw where Miami, I think they put up 3 points against Seattle, but Seattle's defense is looking pretty decent so far this season. So I don't know if I would really put that much stock into that, but whatever the case may be, Skylar Thompson not getting it done, and now the Dolphins are getting him out of there, and they're bringing in Tyler Huntley, who has more experience than Skylar Thompson at the very least. Huntley, if you remember, he was Lamar Jackson's backup in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson was injured for some extended periods of time, so Huntley does actually have more NFL experience and more games under his belt than Skylar Thompson does. And I think he might add like a little bit of an added dimension because I think he can move a little bit with his legs more than Thompson can as well. So Huntley, I mean, I think he might be a spark for the Dolphins here just because they apparently have not been rallying against Skylar Thompson. He has not done anything right. So Dolphins shaking it up here. The market indicators are all over the Dolphins here. And like I said, I think that this line is, at this point, I think it's overreacting too much. I think you're getting value on the Dolphins finally in this situation here. So I lean to the Dolphins in this one. Yeah, Titans, I would like them to run the ball with Pollard because I have him in fantasy, but he's on my bench for the time being because I do have Kamara, Achane, and Aaron Jones all on my team. So those are my 3 guys that I'll be rolling in my running back rotation until the bye weeks come up, and then I have to play Tony Pollard. God help me. And then Seahawks-Lions, the much better of these 2 games. These 2 games, again, Monday night doubleheader, you have 2 games being played at the same time. Oh, gee, I wonder which game people are going to watch more, even though the last time I said that last week, that game wound up being a complete dud, but I mean, come on. You think people are going to watch Tennessee versus Tua-less Miami? Or are they going to watch 3-0 Seattle against 2-1 Detroit? Both teams have been playing really well. Geno Smith up against Jared Goff here. Yeah, I think they're going to be watching the Seahawks and the Lions. This is a pretty good game that they're giving us here, to be honest. Lions down from -4.5 to -3.5. They're a pretty public home favorite here. 70% of the tickets, 66% of the cash. I'm somewhat surprised that the Lions are as public as they are because they have a loss and the Seahawks don't so far. But the public, I guess, is just not putting that much stock into the Seahawks 3-0 record here. They like the Lions offense better. I mean, this is a high-scoring Lions offense, but the Lions offense has not been that high-scoring so far this year. I mean, they haven't put up that many points actually in any of these games, so kind of weird to see the public coming in on them to that extent still after not putting up high point totals, but I still do think the Lions offense is quite good. And in this game against Tampa, as I've mentioned on the show before, that was a misleading result, man. The Lions offense did way better in that game than the score looked. I mean, that was a game where the Lions put up 460 yards of offense and somehow only got 16 points out of that. I mean, they should have had way more points on the scoreboard with that offensive performance. They were able to bounce back last week, which it was a good spot for them, I think, to bounce back off of that loss. But I think it was also kind of a tough spot at the same time. I was kind of confused by that game. I had some issues trying to handicap the side in that one, really. And I wound up picking the Lions at the very least in my pick'em pools. But Lions were able to bounce back. Arizona was coming off just looking way too good and blasting the Rams, which was one of my bets. Made me feel good. My NFL bets have looked pretty good so far. That was one of my bets, Arizona against the Rams there. So the Arizona was kind of in a letdown spot there, even though it was a pretty good Detroit Lions team coming in. The Lions were able to win that game. But now the Lions are returning home from that, facing the Seahawks primetime. I don't see a whole lot to really handicap here as far as the side is concerned. Like, as far as what I look at for the situation, I don't see much, man. Like, if anything, I think Detroit is maybe better than they look so far. And if anything, I think Seattle might not quite be as good as they look so far because look at who Seattle's opponents have been so far, man. I mean, Detroit faced the Rams when the Rams still had most of their offense intact before the injuries happened, although Nakua got injured in that game. But still, they faced the Rams. They faced an Arizona team that's looked okay so far. And who was the other? They faced Tampa, who at least was a playoff team last year, and Tampa was looking for revenge against Detroit there. So Seattle has obviously faced the weaker slate of teams here, man. I mean, they faced Bo Nix in his first game ever as a starter. They faced the New England Patriots with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback at that point. I mean, whatever. And then they faced Miami with essentially no quarterback with Skylar Thompson there. So Seattle, yeah, their defense does look good so far, and I think maybe it is pretty good, but they've done what they've done so far against Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. So they have not been facing an elite slate of quarterbacks, let's say, where at least Detroit has faced Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, and who did I say? Who else? In Baker Mayfield. So Detroit has at least faced significantly better quarterbacks coming into this one. So I don't know that I trust playing the Seahawks side in this one, man. Even though the market looks like it's on the side of the Seahawks here, I don't see it. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do as far as picking this game in my pick'em pools, but I mean, the market indicators look like they're on the Seahawks with the line moving down on the Lions being public, less of the cash on the Lions. All the indicators I look for on the Seahawks side, but I'm not going to be playing it. No, no, thank you. I don't see anything as far as the situation is concerned. And like I said, if anything, I think the Lions are maybe being a little bit undervalued at this point. In Seattle, maybe being a little bit overvalued based on who they've played so far. What's up, Matt? Seventh person watching, and you're leaving. Thank you. We're now down to 5. Thanks for hanging out, though, guys. I appreciate it. I want to try to get some more, but I mean, who's going to come in here and want to listen to my autistic rants, man? Really, I'm up to almost an hour, and I haven't even talked about my plays. So how about I do that? Chicago Bears -3 is absolutely my favorite play of the week. I really like this play on the Chicago Bears, man. I think maybe there were 2.5s out there for a little while. The 3 is actually at reduced juice. So you can actually get 3 at -105, maybe even a little bit better than that. I don't know that you're going to see the 2.5s at any point again, but not a huge, not a huge difference, even though 3 is a key number. I mean, you're looking at it pushing if they win by exactly 3, which not the worst situation here, but this line actually could wind up dropping a little bit. You might wind up being able to get 2.5s again tomorrow. I don't know, because the Rams are a public road underdog in this game, which is really crazy to see. You don't see public road underdogs very much, especially that are this extreme, with 68% of the tickets coming in and playing the Rams on the side and only 63% of the cash. So that public underdogs, man, usually that's a red flag. Like, usually the public is missing something when they're coming in that heavily on the underdog. That underdog is more often than not going to win the game, although we do need the Bears to win this by a little bit of a margin here. It's not too much of a margin. Public, I think, is mostly just playing against the Bears' offense, I would guess here, because the public likes offense, and they're looking at this and saying, well, this is Matthew Stafford against Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams, yeah, he has been horrendous so far, and I don't think he's good at all. I don't expect much out of Caleb Williams at all. Yeah, I mean, that's not why I'm playing the Bears here. I'm playing against the Rams here, man. That's what I'm doing. This is not a play on the Bears. It's not a play on Caleb Williams. I think he sucks, but this is a situational play, and the situation is really bad for the LA Rams, man. I mean, they started out pretty tough game to start out against Detroit, and then they were in a really bad spot, which is why I played Arizona. That was a sandwich spot. Big primetime game against Detroit, and then they had a big game against the San Francisco 49ers coming up next. Second straight road game. They were not ready to face Arizona in that game. Arizona blew them out. But then the LA Rams were able to bounce back, and they got not only their first win of the season, but a huge win against the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, you're talking about the team that won the NFC last year. You're talking about a team that has, I think, beaten the Rams in the playoffs at least once in the last couple of years. Huge win for the Rams there. So the Rams are in a letdown spot. I mean, they're coming off of that, and I think maybe they're even in a sandwich spot because they're looking at facing Green Bay coming up after that. And Green Bay was a playoff team last year. They're looking pretty good so far this year, and Jordan Love might be back at that point. So the Rams, I think they're in a sandwich spot. At the very least, it's a letdown spot, but they could have reason to look ahead to Green Bay too here. But coming off that huge win, not only a huge win over San Francisco, but I believe San Francisco was winning that game by 7 or something late in the game, and the Rams were able to overcome a deficit at the end of that game and pull off an outright upset win as like 7.5-point underdogs. That's a huge, huge win for the Rams. Now they're having to go out on the road, and it's a third road game in 4 weeks, which is also a pretty difficult spot to be in, man. This is not an easy schedule for the Rams. Coming off of that huge win, now they have to go back out on the road again. Not the greatest spot for the Rams, and they're also, I think the Rams are kind of more used to playing on artificial turf now, and they're having to go play on natural grass again here at Chicago. Again, may not be that easy to do, and I don't know what the weather is going to be like. It's probably, we're not at the time of year yet where it's going to be cold now. It'll still be 67, so the cold isn't going to be a factor yet in Chicago, but still, I think this is a bad spot for the Rams. And who do the Rams have on offense, dude? Like, they don't have anybody. Puka Nacua got hurt in the first week, as I mentioned, and then Cooper Kupp went down like right after that. So who is Matthew Stafford throwing to in this game? Their top 2 wide receivers are like Tutu Atwell, the guy in the ballerina outfit, I guess, and then I don't even know who else they even have for wide receivers. Some other dudes who nobody knows. And their rushing attack has not looked good either with Kyren Williams. This Rams offense, I don't know where their points are going to come from at this point, man. Even though I know they scored 27 against the 49ers, who do have a pretty decent defense last week, but the 49ers, they have a lot of injuries, man. This 49ers team, they have some injury problems, and they don't have a lot of depth. So the Rams did that against the 49ers team that's dealing with some injuries, and a key injury on defense that they have is Greenlaw. I think might be out for the entire season at this point. He's the guy who went down in the Super Bowl last year. He was the guy that wrecked his Achilles just by running back out onto the field during the Super Bowl, and that completely derailed the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So he does matter. He's a key component of that defense, and they're missing him right now. So that Rams win maybe looks a little bit better than it really was. And coming into this game, man, like I said, it's a rough spot. Their offense is massively depleted with injuries, and this Rams defense has actually been a nightmare as well. This Rams defense has actually been terrible so far this season, even though only really the Arizona one looks bad. But this defense has been allowing a ton of yardage. I think the Rams might be dead last in the NFL right now in either it's yardage per play or yardage allowed per game or something like that. This Rams defense has been really bad, and they don't have Aaron Donald anymore, but I didn't expect just that to factor that much into how their defense was going to play. But this defense is really, really struggling, and it's not just because of that. I think it's just they're just not meshing so far. Granted, they faced some offenses that know how to score. And yes, they will be facing the worst offense they've faced so far this season, the Bears. That's not saying much because the Bears' offense sucks. But the Bears also might be the best defense they've faced so far because even though Detroit's defense, yeah, they have some characteristics that are all right. I believe they're decent at stopping the run. 49ers defense can be good, but like I said, a lot of injuries there. Chicago's defense is looking pretty good so far this season. They're looking like one of the top defenses in the NFL. So I'm getting the better defense here, even though I like to take the better defense when they're an underdog, and the Bears are not here. So you do need the Bears to score a little bit in this game, but man, the Rams, they just look really bad on both sides of the ball here, and the spot is really bad for them. And then you got the Chicago Bears sitting at 1-2, so the public just doesn't want anything to do with them right now because they haven't been able to score, and that's true. Their highest scoring output was against Tennessee, and their offense didn't do any of it because that was all like a pick six and then I think a punt return touchdown in that game. So yeah, the Bears' offense has not been scoring at all, and they're coming off 2 straight losses. They were both on the road, and last week they had to play a second straight road game against Indy, and they have been at least competitive in all these games. But yeah, again, I just think it's just such a bad spot for the Rams, and it just seems like from the public's perspective, like how are the Bears going to score at all here? Like how could they possibly be a favorite here? So Chicago Bears -3, or if it gets to -2.5, we're going to play on the Chicago Bears there. And then my other play, before I get out of here, I'll only go a little bit over an hour in this one. It will wind up still being shorter than my college football video, which it should because I break down way more games. What do we got here? What did I just put up? Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals -3.5 is going to be my other play here. And this is more of a fade of Washington than it is a play on Arizona, but I don't mind Arizona. I mean, their offense their offense looks like it's going to be decent this season, maybe, hopefully, with Kyler Murray, like if he's actually going to remain healthy. And he is healthy coming into this game. And Arizona, I mean, they've put up some decent numbers on the ground so far this season at the very least. Hopefully their running backs remain healthy as well. James Conner still there. They do have Benson waiting in the wings, a high draft pick, I think, out of Alabama. There was it Alabama? I think it was Alabama. I forget now. No, it was Florida State, maybe. I don't remember where any of these guys came from. I think it might have been from Florida State. My mistake. One of those decent college football programs there. But let's look at the market here. Arizona, they look like they're down from -4.5 to -3.5. And the 3.5, you can actually get it at even money right now. So it's possible it falls to the 3. Although I'm not quite sure about that because they do have 58% of the tickets, but it looks like they have 73% of the cash. So it does look like there might be some money coming in on the Arizona side. I like the Arizona side with my situational handicapping, man, just because Washington, I think they're in a bad spot, dude. They just had a big win at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I mean, it's Joe Burrow. Cincinnati, they're a playoff contending team, man, over the last couple of seasons. Washington went into their house with a rookie quarterback on Monday night, and they were able to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. That is a huge win for Washington, dude. That's like, I think if any game is like a legitimizer game where you might be in a big letdown spot after that, I think it's that game. That was like Jaden Daniels' coming out party, man. He had like 93% completion percentage in that game. He had decent rushing stats as well. I mean, he was doing everything in that game. I think he looks too good after that game, however, though. So, I mean, I think it's a letdown spot. That was in front of a primetime audience. Washington looked way too good in that game, and I think they are going to be improved for sure. Excuse me. Jaden Daniels is certainly improving their offense significantly, but when you look that good, I don't think you can go anywhere except regression. Even if he remains good, I don't think he's going to be as good as he was in that game repeatedly over and over again. I mean, how could you? Like, no quarterback is putting up 93% completion percentage for an entire season or even for really multiple games. So I don't expect that to continue, even though Arizona's defense is kind of suspect. They do have a lot of offensive weapons that can kind of trade points with Washington here, but Washington's defense is terrible, though. So that's the other thing about this game here is that Washington, yeah, their offenses look pretty good. Well, look good last week at the very least, but Washington's defense is not good, man. They still have a lot of problems on defense. So Arizona should be able to put up points in this game. So I'm fading Washington for multiple reasons. Bad defense, but the situational spot, they're in a letdown spot because they're coming off a huge win in a huge environment, a huge situation in primetime on Monday night. And that means they're also playing on a short week and having to travel to Arizona on a short week. That's not an easy thing to do, man. Not an easy thing to do. And it's a second straight road game, and it's their third road game in 4 weeks as well. So both teams I'm fading in a really difficult spot, playing a third road game in 4 weeks to start the season. And they're playing with a rookie quarterback, like I said. So tough environment for him, man. I think you're going to see a little bit of regression this week out of him, out of Washington in general. So I think it's a bad spot for them in Arizona. They're in a much better, this sets up much nicer for them because they're not going anywhere. They're just staying at home. They've been at home for multiple weeks. They're staying at home for a third straight week, so it's much easier on them. They haven't had to travel like at all. And yes, they do have San Francisco up next. Is that going to be a look ahead to San Francisco? I mean, it's a big game, but when you're 1-2, I don't think you're going to be looking ahead, man. When you're 1-2, you're thinking about, we got to win a game and even up our record here, man. So I don't think that they're going to be looking ahead because they're coming off of a loss against Detroit, which, yeah, it was a fairly close game against a good team. But, yeah, nonetheless, they're coming off of a loss. In Arizona, they've had a tough schedule so far, man. They came within 6 against Buffalo on the road to start the season. Not unimpressive, really, to do that and to put up that many points, 28 against a Buffalo defense that hasn't looked too bad. Then crushing the Rams, although granted, like I said, the Rams are dealing with injury issues on the offense or whatever, sure, but still pretty impressive to blast the Rams to that extent, even though it was a very bad spot for the Rams. And then Arizona pretty much hung with Detroit, and they not only did that, but that Detroit offense actually didn't do that well against Arizona, even though Detroit has a lot of weapons on offense. Arizona was able to somehow hold them to 20 points. I don't know what the yardage discrepancy looked like in this game, but yeah, I mean, Arizona did lose the yardage battle by 100 points. So their defense wasn't terrific in that game, but still they hung in that game at the very least. I like this one for Arizona. I think it's a bad spot for Washington. I think we're looking at still Arizona's the somewhat better team coming into this one. So I'm laying the points with Arizona. Like I said, I think it's a bad spot for Washington. So those are the two plays for me, man. Broke down a bunch of the games, wrote down the primetime games. Chicago Bears -3, my favorite play of the week, or -2.5 if it gets down to that. You might be able to find it there tomorrow because the public is coming in heavily on the Rams. Really, we're fading the Rams or we're fading Washington in what I think are two bad spots. So it does mean I'm laying two favorites. You usually see me on underdogs. I am the underdog taker and the undertaker, but I'm on two favorites this week. Arizona Cardinals -3.5, the other game I'm on. That's going to do it for me, man. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. I'm Tower Gang Toad, of course. You can follow me on Twitter. You can hit me up, ask me questions about these games. I'll try to respond to that if you want me to. Some games that maybe I didn't cover. I only have enough time, man. I'm only one man, so I can't cover everything. I could, I guess, but, man, it would be a strain on me. Go follow the Tower Gang podcast, of course. I mean, it's the most hilarious podcast out there. If you like offensive comedy, you'll love it. I mean, you guys are probably all here because you know the Tower Gang podcast. You don't know Better Off Dad. You don't know me. You know me as Toad from Tower Gang, right? Not the sports gambler. Maybe both at this point. I don't know. Follow Tower Gang, of course. We just had Jeremy Kaufman on this week, the fighter of feds. I missed that episode, but I think it was probably a pretty good episode. Kaufman is a wild guy, wild persona. Love that guy. I think it was a good episode, probably. I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know. Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. You get bonus content, pre-show, post-show. Can watch them both live, can watch them after the fact, whatever you want, man. You get extra content from us. Get to hang out in the Telegram with us. I have a betting chat in there, which I'm not too active in it. I'd like to be more active in it. I should maybe work on that a little bit, but I think that's going to be it. And as I always mention, at least on the NFL show, I forgot to mention on the college show, also follow flapper.net because they give me shout outs on their blog, flappr.net. I love that guy or those guys. I think they have multiple guys. I don't even know who the main guy is at Flapper. I just know him as Flapper. He's in my Better Off Dead group chat on Twitter, and he's a guy that I interact with on Twitter a decent amount. He does a lot of posting about women, sports, and libertarianism, kind of pro-liberty stuff, maybe more on in the conservative realm, conservative side, political stuff, and like political history. And they got a YouTube channel going on. They got a blog where they talk about all that stuff. So all the stuff we like the most, man, right? Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tracy, Matt. All you guys are in the chat, man. Mid, Pistolero, thanks a lot, guys. Abrogate, everybody who was in here. If you guys lasted the whole episode without creaming your pants, I would be shocked, but that is an impressive feat. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. Let's have a good Sunday. Let's have it be better than my Saturday so that I'm not dead by the end of it. I want to get back into the black again because I'm back slightly in the red on the year. So let's not let that continue to be the case. Peace out, guys. Have a good rest of the night. It is late, boy.